As frozen earth holds the determined seed, this sacred space holds our weariness, our worry, our laughter, and our celebration. Let us bring seed and soul into the light of thought, the warmth of community, and the hope of love. Let us see together, hear together, love together. Let us worship. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, wherever and whenever you are watching this. Especially grateful for those who are listening in live to our Sunday worship. You can hear the bells of our neighbor church, at least up in this neck of the woods, start their celebration. So welcome. I hope that whatever it is that you seek in our space and time together, that it may be enriching, whether it's a space for joy and laughter, space for tears and sorrow, space for a few words of wisdom, or perhaps simply just the opportunity to rest with the divine. Whatever it is that you seek in this space, I hope it will be found, as well as a sense of community. Even though we are separated by time and distance, we are still, in some way, together. Our opening words were from the Unitarian Laura Wallace. We turn to another Unitarian from the Neshoba Unitarian Universalist Church, Crystal Hogan, for our chalice lighting. You might have a chalice at home. You might have a tea light or an electric light. Even if you have none of those things, this is, of course, something that is customary within our ritual within Unitarian churches. Even if you have none of those things, rest assured that you have an inner light, spark of divinity, creativity, and inspiration. So if you can turn to that and give recognition for it, and give recognition of the time that we're going to spend together, we'll have these words of Crystal Hogan. We light this chalice to honor our work, to celebrate our community, and to bring hope and determination to our mission in the wider world. Luckily, in these days we have backups. A bit more modest, perhaps. But again, let us give honor to that flame that we light today. As I said, that is a global ritual. It's enacted through Unitarian churches around the world on Sundays and on occasion on other days. We turn now to a more custom for our own church, the reciting of our covenant, which will appear next to me. So please do read along as I read out our covenant. We gather here in sacred fellowship to witness the fullness of our lives and all life, to hold and be held, tell stories and listen, to be renewed and renew the world. We speak with care and patience. We act with gentleness and compassion. We forgive each other and ourselves. In faith that we build beloved community, we renew our covenant today. Amen. And so we turn to a time of prayer, moving from the global to the communal and now to the individual. Graceful visitor, ever fleeting, like stardust that catches and throws a glimmer to our eyes punctuating a moment in life perfectly, or as a poetic line whose beauty and truth teases out the self-same values within our hearts, lifting our spirits as the most gentle breeze lifts the butterfly. In our minds, the memories colliding through random encounters, meetings unforeseen, unplanned, for which we are grateful as your knock on the door. Unexpected, but loved no less. Often unanswered, as fear and busyness assault our sensibilities. Hopefully answered today. Amen. So we come now to our first point of communal singing. You're invited to sing along with me the hymn Dear Weaver of Our Lives Design, with words by Nancy Dorian, words by Nicholas Herman, harmonized by J.S. Bach. Thank you. So we turn now to a reading from the Reverend Bill Sykes, an Anglican priest. It's entitled Darkness. A lady in her mid-50s came to see me. She was going through a time of darkness in her life and asked me if there was anything I could do to help her. I put her on to an anthology appropriately entitled From Darkness to Light by the publisher Victor Gallant. Apparently, he had gone through a very dark period in his life in which he had lost all hope. Somehow he had managed to come through and compile this anthology to help fellow sufferers. She cautiously accepted the book and went away to look through in her own time. She returned several weeks later and was a little better. She had found the first part of the book, on darkness, particularly helpful, and hadn't realized how many people suffered from this condition. People's recorded experiences of despair, depression, desolation, and darkness fell in very much with what she was feeling. That in itself had been a great help. She wasn't the only person in the world to have gone through these awful feelings. Perhaps she was fairly normal after all. There was now a little movement stirring in the depths below, a movement away from gloominess and sadness. She felt she was beginning to move away from darkness to light, but complained that the progress was very slow. I reminded her of some words of a spiritual director. You can't hurry the dawn. and encouraged her to go forward slowly. It took her several months to work through the darkness, but eventually she succeeded and regained her composed demeanor. On Darkness by the Reverend Bill Sykes. To complement this is a beautiful reading from the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker, theologian who served as president of the UU Star King School for the ministry in Berkeley, California from 1999 to 2014. In the midst of a world marked by tragedy and beauty, there must be those who bear witness against unnecessary destruction and who, with faith, stand and lead in freedom with grace and power. There must be those who speak honestly and do not avoid seeing what must be seen of sorrow and outrage, or tenderness and wonder. There must be those whose grief troubles the water, while their voices sing and speak refreshed worlds. There must be those whose exuberance rises with lovely energy that articulates earth's joys. There must be those who are restless for respectful and loving companionship among human beings, whose presence invited people to be themselves without fear. There must be those who gather with the congregation of remembered and compassion and draw water from old wells and walk with simple paths of love for neighbor. And there must be communities of people who seek to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with God, who call on the strength of soul force to heal, transform, and bless life. There must be religious witness. In the Midst of a World by the Reverend Dr. Rebecca Parker. There is a beautiful story, well told by M. Scott Peck, about a group of monks living amongst themselves. Their order has become thin and frail, and there are only a few of them left. Their abbot makes a journey to meet with a Jewish rabbi with whom he has had a long friendship. At the conclusion of their meeting, dealing with a number of issues, numerical decline being one of them, the rabbi comments that the Messiah is amongst you. The abbot and the others in the order reflect on these words. In Peck's retelling, each member is assessed individually in negative terms. One is rude, one is lazy, one thinks too highly of themselves. But with that invocation that the Messiah is amongst you, comes the realization that all these people possess beautiful qualities as well: compassion, determination, grace. So the story goes that they begin to treat each other well, fearing that each other might be the Messiah. And then they begin to treat themselves well, in case they, in fact, are the Messiah. And from this generosity and love, the order flourishes. This story is not unfamiliar to some of you. I've read it before, and I know some of my colleagues will have, and maybe you've read those original words of M. Scott Peck. The message that many take from it, and I have in the past, is to treat each other lovingly, and we will all be enriched. But perhaps there is more meaning that we can draw from the story. When I think of it now, I think how the individuals occupy specific characteristics. Positive and negative, they represent not just some order of monks, but rather a group of unique persons brought together under one mission. In this case, the worship and commitment to God as their faith and ritual calls. With fresh ears, I hear not only a story of transformation, but also one that is an assertion of our specific gifts. Martin Buber, an insightful Jewish theologian and philosopher, recounts a story about specific gifts. A rabbi named Zusha died and went to stand before the judgment seat of God. As he waited for God to appear, he grew nervous, thinking about his life and how little he had done. He began to imagine that God was going to ask him, "Why weren't you Moses?" Or "Why weren't you Solomon?" Or "Why weren't you David?" But when God appeared, the rabbi was surprised. God simply asked, "Why weren't you Zusha?" In Peck's story, as the Messiah-seeking monks begin to suspect that their colleagues possess divine providence, they don't dismiss each other's individuality. In fact, the qualities each one holds is held up as part of their character. The one with the gift of compassion is not expected to imitate the one who preaches well, and the one who is patient is not expected to mimic the one who runs headfirst into activities. And in this supportive environment, they are all able to exemplify their best selves. God wishes this upon Rabbi Zusha, that Zusha be Zusha. Similarly, when the composer George Gershwin asked Maurice Ravel for lessons, Ravel replied, "Why should you be a second-rate Ravel when you could be a first-rate Gershwin?" And throughout the ages, we seemingly step outside of our childlike assurance of who we are, seeking instead to become a pale imitation of someone else. What a relief it can be for those who return from that journey. Our first reading, on darkness, by the Reverend Bill Sykes, describes an encounter with a woman who described being depressed. Victor Galance's collection on darkness appears to help, but the whole process takes time. The book it comes from, Visions of Hope, is a collection of reflections and words on a myriad of topics, and in fact is the one in a series of such collections: visions of faith, visions of love, visions of glory. The whole endeavor began with Bill Sykes' own period of acedia, or spiritual malaise. Taking some time off, he worked his way through a number of different memories, spiritual collections, and of course for him, the Bible. This perhaps lifted him out, or perhaps it served as a means of distraction until that spark of inspiration returned. Of course, for us all, our clouds move of their own accord, and I appreciate these words may feel hollow or unfair to some. For some, the clouds linger. For some, they shower. For some, they break apart. In the manner of Peck, Buber, and Ravel, the Reverend Rebecca Parker writes of such diverse qualities: those who bear witness against unnecessary destruction, those who speak honestly, those whose grief troubles the water, those whose exuberance rises with lovely energy, those who are restless. But ultimately, she reminds us that there must be communities, and with each person seeking to exemplify their best selves, without the lilac pretending to be a rose, the community is strengthened. The Reverend Mark Morrison Reed reflects that the central task of the religious community is to unveil the bonds that bind each to all. There is a connectedness, a relationship discovered amid the particulars of our own lives and the lives of others. Once felt, it inspires us to act for justice. So it is imperative that we hold each other when weak, we look upon each other during life's torrents. We won't be able to shift each other's clouds personally, but that connectedness is a call to be there, to listen, to support as our gifts show how. Mark Morrison Reed continues, "It is the Church that assures us that we are not struggling for justice on our own. but as members of a larger community. The religious community is essential, for alone our vision is too narrow to see all that must be seen, and our strength too limited to do all that must be done. Together, our vision widens, and our strength is renewed. But this strength is built from many different strands, some seemingly at cross purposes. It is the warp and the weft that come together to build strong cloth. And it is the people living to each full potential, such that we can work towards a common endeavor of care for the community and all of creation. I'll strive to be Cody, and I hope you can be yourself. Amen. Thank you to Aaron and Catherine, Lynn, and Laura. You now have a chance to share your joys and your sorrows, your trials and your triumphs. If you have a YouTube or a Gmail account, you are able to, or a Google account, you're able to type into the chat box, and I will be reading those out. If you know my mobile number, if you're a member of the chapel or have been on our mailing list, then you may be able to text me, and I will read them out. If you prefer to hold them in your heart, know that your presence here is enough. I would like to begin with a candle for all those who've had birthdays this past week, as we've had certainly a few in our congregation, and I'm sure a few others elsewhere. But happy birthday to all of those people within our congregation. And from Catherine, a candle from my head teacher friend who felt she had no other option to resign from a job and a career that she has dedicated decades to. I hope that she receives the support and recognition that she deserves. From Rachel. A candle for all those staying safe and those patiently waiting for the vaccine and some form of reality to return. For all those joys and sorrows here spoken, and those that remain silently in our hearts. Let us turn now to a time of prayer. Loving Spirit, who draws together this community in a comforting embrace, may our sharing of tender wounds be a balm upon our hearts, and of hopeful joys an inward smile, as that which is forefront in our minds. May we graciously accept and hold the trials and triumphs of those present and afar, as we are accepted and held by you. Amen. Thank you. There is always, of course, some technical hiccup. So there were a number of joys that I missed due to my live chat feed stopping at probably the most inopportune time. So we have a candle of hope for springtime from Adam, and a candle from Vicky for me. Thank you. But you can all hear me, right? We come now to our notices before we conclude our service. If you are in need of pastoral care, please write to me at minister@crossstreetchapel.org.uk. Write as well if you would like to provide a reading or some element within the service. We're especially keen to have photographs that we can include in our times of meditation. And if you have just joined us, you are more than welcome to join our mailing list, again by writing to minister@crossstreetchapel.org.uk. We will be having our Zoom tea and coffee after the service. The details are on my side. So if you need to pause to jot these down, please do so. Again, if you're on the mailing list, you will have received a note yesterday with these details, as well as a clickable link. And finally, we're grateful for any donations that can assist the mission of our chapel. You're able to donate online at justgiving.com/crossstreetchapel. That's all one word. Or email minister@crossstreetchapel.org.uk for details about setting up a standing order. So we come now to our second hymn today, Just As Long As I Have Breath, words by Alicia S. Carpenter, music by Johann Ebeling, and arranged by David Dawson. Thank you to Aaron for the music. Thank you to Lynn and Laura for the photos, and Catherine for video editing. And thank you to all of you for creating and sharing worship today. We close with the words of Jürgen Moltmann. Hope is lived, and it comes alive when we go outside of ourselves and, in joy and pain, take part in the lives of others. It becomes concrete in open community with others. Amen. Go in peace.